Welcome back. We are reading Magic Tree House, number 14, Day of the Dragon King by Mary Pope Osborne. We'll be starting on chapter 8. I believe that we'll be able to finish this book today, and then we'll go on from there. So, as I see pictures in the book as I'm reading, I will be showing you the pictures so that you can see what's going on. Chapter 8, The Tomb. Jack and Annie stood frozen. The silent soldiers did too. Finally, Annie spoke. "They're fake," she said. "Fake?" whispered Jack. "Yeah, they're not real," she said. "They look real." Annie walked straight toward the front row of soldiers. Jack held his breath. Annie pulled the soldier's nose. "Fake," she said. "Oh, brother," said Jack. He walked over to the soldier and touched his painted face. It was as hard as stone. "It's amazing," said Jack. Annie nodded. "It's like a museum." She walked down a row between two lines of soldiers. "Wait, this is kind of spooky. What is this place?" Jack asked. He put down his sack and pulled out the china book. He found a picture of the frozen army and he read aloud. The Dragon King had 7,000 life-size clay figures made for his burial tomb. The clay was baked and painted. The Dragon King hoped that the clay army would protect him after he died. "It's like a pyramid in ancient Egypt," said Jack. "Do you remember those? The queen was buried with a boat and lots of things to take to the afterlife." He looked all around. "Annie?" "I'm here," she called. She was far down another row. "Come back here," Jack yelled to her. "No, you come here," said Annie. "It's so cool. All their faces are different." Jack threw the book into his backpack, and then he hurried down the row to Annie. "Look," she said. "Just look at them." So take a look at how the faces on the soldiers are different, just like if they were real, live soldiers. In the flickering lamplight, they wandered down the rows of soldiers. No two soldiers had the same nose, the same eyes, or the same mouth. "Oh, man, no wonder so many people had to work on this tomb," said Jack. "They really did a good job," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. There were kneeling archers and foot soldiers dressed in red and black armor. There were real bronze swords, daggers, axes, spears, bows, and arrows. There were even life-size wooden chariots with horses. The horses looked completely real. They were different colors with white teeth and red tongues. "I have to take some notes about this," said Jack. He pulled out his notebook and pencil, and then kneeling on the brick floor, he wrote, "No two faces are the same, not even the horses." "Jack," said Annie, "you know what?" "What?" "I think we're lost," she said. "Lost?" Jack stood up. "We're not lost." "Yeah, well, then which way is out?" said Annie. Jack looked all around. All he could see were rows of soldiers. In front of them, to the right, to the left, behind them, nothing but clay soldiers. "Which way did we come?" said Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. All the rows looked the same. They stretched out endlessly. Jack tried not to panic. "I better look this up," he said. "Forget it," said Annie. "Morgan said the research book will guide us. But in our darkest hour, only the ancient legend would save us." "Well, is this our darkest hour?" Jack asked. Annie nodded. "Yeah, it's pretty dark." It does seem to be getting darker in here, thought Jack, and the air was getting thicker, too. It seemed like it was getting harder to breathe. "Well, let's ask for help," said Jack. He reached into the sack and he pulled out the bamboo book. He held it up and he said, "Save us!" As Jack waited, the tomb seemed unbearably quiet. Jack held the book up again. "Please help us find our way out," he said. He and Annie just kept waiting, but nothing happened. The air was growing even thicker. The light was getting dimmer, and the countless rows of soldiers seemed to be creepier. Help did not come. Jack started to feel faint. I guess We'll just have to... Look, said Annie! What? The ball of thread. It rolled out of your sack, she said. So what? Said Jack. He looked at his cloth sack lying on the floor, and the ball of yellow silk thread had indeed rolled out, and it was still rolling, leaving a trail of yellow thread. Chapter 9. The Silk Path. What's going on? Said Jack. I don't know, but we better follow it, Annie said. She hurried after the ball of silk thread, and Jack put the bamboo book into his sack and took off after her. They followed the trail of thread down the row, where it turned down another row. Hey, that's impossible, said Jack. That's scientifically impossible. I told you it's magic, cried Annie. Jack couldn't believe it, but he kept following the thread. Suddenly the trail of thread was gone. The ball had completely unrolled. Jack and Annie both stood still for a moment and caught their breath. What now? Said Jack. Well, I guess we go up those stairs, Annie said. What stairs? Said Jack. Right there. Jack looked through the dim light, and he saw the entrance to a stairway only a few feet away. Let's get out of here, he said. They ran up the stairs. At the top, they saw that they were in a hall that led to the entrance of the mound. They walked, and they walked, and they walked down the lamp-lit passage. Finally, Jack stopped. I don't remember this hall being so long, he said. Me either, said Annie. I guess those weren't the same stairs that we went down. Well, what should we do now? Said Jack. We better keep going, said Annie. Yeah, we don't have much choice, said Jack. They started walking again. They rounded a corner and they came to a door. Oh, great, said Annie. Wait, we don't know what's on the other side of that door, said Jack. Go slow and be careful. Okay, said Annie. Slowly and carefully she opened the door. Then she peeked out. Yippee, she said softly. Annie stepped into the fading daylight, and Jack stepped out after her. The sun had gone down, and they were standing outside the gate of the Dragon King's palace. They could see the market not far away. The stalls were all closing for the day. We're safe, said Annie. Jack breathed a huge sigh of relief. Just then a gong sounded. It was coming from the tower of the city walls. Oh, man, they're getting ready to close those gates, said Jack. He clutched his sack as they took off. They charged up the street, and they ran past the market. They ran past the rich houses and past the poor houses. Their straw shoes fell off, but Jack and Annie just kept running barefoot. Just as the giant wooden gates started to close, they tore right through the gates. They charged across the bridge and kept running up the dirt road, past the farmhouse and through the field. By the time they reached their tree, Jack's lungs were aching. His heart pounded and his feet burned. He followed Annie up the rope ladder. When they got inside the tree house, Jack collapsed. Let's go home, he said, out of breath. He reached for the Pennsylvania book. Wait, said Annie, looking out the window. Look, they found each other. Who found who? Said Jack, panting. He dragged himself over toward the window, and he looked out. 2 figures embraced at the edge of the field. The silk weaver and the man who takes care of the cows, said Annie. Oh, yeah, said Jack. Bye, Annie called to them, and the couple waved back. Annie sighed happily. We can leave now, she said. Jack opened the Pennsylvania book and pointed at the picture of the Frog Creek woods, and he said, I wish we could go there. The wind started to blow. Jack looked out one last time at the Chinese couple. They seemed to be glowing like the stars. The tree house started to spin. It spun faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. The Ancient Legend. Jack opened his eyes. He was wearing his own clothes and his sneakers again. The cloth sack had turned back into his backpack. "Welcome home, Master Librarian," said Morgan. She stood in the treehouse smiling at them. "Hi," said Annie. "We brought you the ancient legend," said Jack. "Wonderful," said Morgan. Jack reached into his backpack and he took out the china book. Then he pulled out the bamboo book and he handed them both to Morgan. "What's that legend about, anyway?" said Annie. "It's called The Silk Weaver and the Cowherd," said Morgan. "It's a very famous Chinese tale." "Guess what, Morgan?" said Annie. "We actually met them. We helped get them together." "Oh, you did you?" said Morgan. "Yes," said Jack. "The silk weaver's ball of silk saved us." "What does the legend say about them?" Annie asked. "It says that very long ago they were heavenly beings who lived in the sky," said Morgan. "When they came to earth, they fell in love." Well, that's when we met them," said Annie. "Yes, I imagine so," said Morgan. "The book you brought back tells about their happiness on earth, but I'm afraid a later legend tells us that when they returned to the sky, the king and the queen of the skies separated them by a heavenly river called the Milky Way." "Oh, no," said Annie. "They get back together once a year," said Morgan. "On that night the birds make a bridge in the sky over the Milky Way." Jack and Annie both gazed up at the bright summer sky. "Go home now," said Morgan, "and come back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. Next you're going to find a book in the country of Ireland over 1,000 years ago." "That sounds like fun," said Annie. Morgan frowned. "I'm afraid that it's a very dangerous time," she said, "for Viking raiders often attack the seacoast." "Vikings?" said Jack. He had had enough danger to last them a lifetime. "Don't worry about it now," said Morgan. "Just go home and rest." Jack nodded his head. "I'll try," he said, pulling on his backpack. "Bye," said Annie. "See you in 2 weeks." "Thank you both for your help," said Morgan. "Any time," said Annie. They headed down the rope ladder, and from the ground they waved to Morgan, and then they started for home. As they got to the edge of the woods, Annie stopped. "Listen to the crickets," she said. Jack listened. The cricket chirps sounded louder than usual. "Their ancestors lived in the time of the Dragon King," said Annie. "Oh, brother," said Jack. "Right now the grown-ups are telling the little crickets it's a legend," said Annie. "Yeah, sure," said Jack. "A legend passed down from their ancestors," said Annie. Jack smiled. He didn't want to admit it, but the cricket noise did sound like a storytelling. He could almost hear them saying, "Dragon King, Dragon King, Dragon King." "Jack! Annie!" came a voice. It was their mother calling to them. The spell was broken. The cricket stories were just plain old cricket sounds again. "Coming!" Jack shouted. Jack and Annie ran down their street across their yard. "Did you two have a good time in China?" their mother asked. "It was pretty scary," said Annie. "And we got lost in a tomb, but we were saved by an ancient book." Their mom just smiled at them, and she shook her head. My, books are wonderful, aren't they?" she said. "Yep," Jack and Annie both said, and they followed their mother inside. The end. We'll start book number 15 on Monday. Have a great weekend, guys.